Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for September 19th through the 25th. We have an exciting week ahead of us. This week's highlights, we have Venus trining Uranus. We start the week off actually with that, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because the moon's going to be there making some action too. The sun is going to enter Libra. Fall finally begins. What I love, now that I live back here in Denver, what I love about Denver is that you get all 4 seasons, and it's been Virgo season. So we've seen the change from summer going into fall, and next week is actually when fall begins, and the leaves all change color and everything becomes beautiful. But we start to go into the winter. We also have a Mercury Cazimi this week. All of the clarity and all of the solutions for what this Mercury retrograde has brought will be coming alive and will be in your face this week, which is something to look forward to. We have Mercury going back into Virgo as well, which I really like for a post-Cazimi Mercury. So it's like, we have the conversations that we have to have, and then Mercury goes back into Virgo and it's solution time. And then we end this week with the new moon in Libra. This new moon is really exciting. It's opposite Jupiter. So there's a lot of, with Jupiter being in Aries, all of that expansion, all of that fun Jupiter and Aries stuff that we've been getting. This new moon is really going to balance it out and get us kind of situated so we can deal with it better once we go into 2023. Some quick announcements, actually. Over on my Patreon, I have 2023 year-ahead horoscopes for each rising sign already there. They're going to eventually be posted on here, but not for a while. So if you want early access to your 2023 rising sign horoscope, make sure you check out my Patreon. As well, I'm now on Rumble, and I'm now on Odyssey. So if you're one of those people that are into Odyssey, that are into Rumble, go ahead and check out my page there. It should be Cam White Astro as well. I'm on TikTok now, too. The only problem with TikTok is it's Cam White Astrology, and I have to wait until Mercury stations direct because that's the timeline it gave me to go to Cam White Astro. So follow me at Cam White Astrology on TikTok. I post clips of my weeklies and my delineations there. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We start Monday off with the moon making a sextile to Venus and Uranus while Venus trines Uranus. So like I said before, I'm actually kind of looking forward to this because the moon's going to be right here in between the middle of Uranus and Venus. Now, Venus in Virgo, again, fun, passion, romance. She's in fall. It's like, again, Venus in Virgo is too hypercritical of the things that Venus isn't perfect at. So it's hard to it's hard to enjoy pleasure when you're overthinking things, right? But what I like about Venus in Virgo trining Uranus is this is some kind of solution. This is some kind of inventive way of getting what you want or finding a way to have fun or get pleasure in a very creative way. Venus and Virgo trining Uranus in Taurus. It was a little bit easier to talk about this during more so the pandemic because I think one time when Venus and Virgo trined Uranus, there was like this mask outfit that came out. And Venus and Virgo Venus is about fashion. It's about looking good. And in Virgo, we're talking about like technicals. We're talking about specifics. So as it trines Uranus, I think this is a good day to, try something innovative, try something different, especially if you're in that Venus and Virgo mode of kind of like, this isn't good enough, that isn't good enough. This would be a really supportive day to try something new. What I also like about this is the moon's going to be here in Cancer. The moon, our emotions, how we're feeling, it's in Cancer. We're thinking about, protection. We're thinking about safety. We're thinking about, maybe not the word inclusion is best, but just kind of like really focusing on what our needs are. And as the moon is sextiling Venus and sextiling Uranus, there's kind of like this, focusing on necessity. Moon in Cancer days, it's hard not to think of like doing laundry when the moon is in Cancer. Like there's a lot of laundry energy with Venus and Gemini and the moon in Cancer here. I mean, not Venus and Gemini, Venus and Virgo with the moon in Cancer. So this would be a great day to think about, hey, what do you need? What do you need to take care of? What's going to make you feel best? And I think this moon in Cancer sextiling Venus in Virgo is like, hey, maybe, get rid of some of that. If you have some old clothes in your closet, get rid of them. Maybe wash some of those old winter clothes that you haven't worn in a while. That's kind of the energy of Monday. It's just really taking care of things that you need to take care of. It may not necessarily be like it's Venus and Virgo. You got to, clean off this old jacket or whatever. But it's Venus trining Uranus. Maybe you go through your closet and you find something, that you didn't know that you had or that you forgot that you had, and maybe it makes you feel better. But that's what Monday's looking like. Not all that crazy, but I do like the energy. As we get into Tuesday, though, I like Tuesday. And again, I've been saying this for a couple weeks now, but when the moon goes into the fire signs and in the air signs, it's going to be hitting and unlocking all of these planets that are really all of the transiting planets necessarily. Moon's going to go into Leo. It's going to first make a sextile to Mercury and trine Jupiter. This is awesome. We're talking about, the moon, again, our emotions, how we kind of feel day to day. I don't like using the word the unconscious for the moon. I like thinking about things like there's the solar way of thinking about things, right? Which is like, how does everything look? What is, maybe not reality is the best word, but the solar way of doing things is very from the heart. It's very from the higher mind, versus the moon is much more internalized. It's much more guttural. And as it's in Leo, we're talking about pride, we're talking about passion, we're talking about glory, right? And that moon is going to, again, make a sextile to Mercury, where I think as the moon goes into Leo, we're going to feel, and again, this isn't actually until later on in the afternoon on Tuesday. The moon will still kind of be in Cancer here and then ingress into Leo a little bit more later on in the afternoon. So as the moon's in Cancer, we'll kind of feel, it'll be void, so we probably won't do anything. And then we'll probably get this burst of energy somewhere after the afternoon. And the moon sextiles Mercury, I think this is when it's going to be easier to communicate, conversate. The moon's in Leo, right? And it's also a waning moon, right? We're getting ready for this new moon in Libra. We're kind of, getting our ducks in a row here, so to say. And the moon's in Leo, like, hey, this is what I want. Hey, this is what's going to make me feel best. Hey, this is what I'm really passionate about. And as it sextiles Mercury, there's this ability to communicate it and understand it. Mercury's retrograde, so we're rethinking and we're kind of going over all of these things that we've been doing the past few weeks. And I think this is not necessarily solution oriented, but I think this is inspiring for a solution, or at least feeling confident about changing things up as the moon sextiling Mercury. It's like, oh, I'm actually willing to do something different. Like I have this confidence about going about it. And once the moon sextiles Mercury, it then just trines Jupiter for a little while. And that's going to be going on from the whole afternoon later on into the evening. And Jupiter's retrograde in Aries. I just got done recording my 2023 year ahead horoscopes, and I talked about Jupiter retrograde. And a lot of Jupiter retrograde is like Jupiter going into a sign is like giving you all of this hope, giving you all of this abundance, giving you all of these opportunities. And then when Jupiter goes retrograde, you kind of have to create that yourself. Like that's when faith kind of loses itself. And, it's easy to have faith when everything's going your way. And that's in the flow of life. But when life begins to ebb, how do you create that abundance? How do you create that faith and that hope internally? And so as the moon, again, separates from Mercury and starts to trine Jupiter, I think this is where it's going to be easier to restore that hope, to have that faith. And this is Jupiter and Aries stuff. Like you have the ability, you have the confidence, you have the willpower to do it. You just have to actually do it. And I believe as we get into Libra season and this new moon will be opposite Jupiter, a lot of this is about balance, right? You can't just have the Aries energy going full force, sparking and initiating. There's got to be this balance to it. And so I think this is really like, okay, with Jupiter and Aries, we learned that if we just, bust through the wall, if we just kind of go for it, of course we can make things happen, but that's not necessarily sustainable. And so now this is like, how do we bring that Jupiter and Aries energy into balance with our lives, right? We can't just rely on a Jupiter transit to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be, ambitious and, forthright and do all these really big things just because Jupiter's in Aries. We want that energy all the time, right? And I think this is going to be the time to go, how do I carry this Jupiter and Aries energy sustainably and throughout? Same thing with relationships. Jupiter and Aries very focused on the self, and it's not always about you. This is one of the things I love about birth charts and astrology. Life isn't always about you, and that says that in your birth chart. But this is one of those moments of like, as the moon's in Leo and there is this kind of focus on self, I think this is a empowering day for the self in order to kind of, again, well, it's like communicating with the right people, getting the right mindset, and this is allowing you to go, hey, I can do this. Hey, I am able to muster up this faith and this confidence myself. But that's Tuesday. Tuesday's looking awesome. I think it's going to be very inspirational. I think it's going to be very magnetic, might be a good word. Then we get to Wednesday, and the moon is just going to be making a sextile to Mars all day long. I have mixed feelings about this simply because it's Mars, and it's not that this is bad at all. I like this, but Mars is in Gemini, and something that you guys are going to start to see more and more is distraction. Mars in Gemini is getting pulled in two different directions, right? It's like you want to handle this and you want to handle that. There's this and there's that. And this moon in Leo day, as it sextiles Mars in Gemini, I think this is a very... Again, this is a waning moon, right? If this was a full moon, this is like preparing for all this big stuff and getting everything ready. This is kind of like getting everything ready for a slowdown, getting everything ready for a, ceremony almost. When I think of a new moon, I think of it as a time to ground yourself and kind of, recalibrate your sense of direction. And I think as the moon sextiling Mars in Gemini, this is like, I'm kind of boring with this. I always like to say like new moons are a great time to clean up things, get your space clean, get your things organized for the next 30 days until we get to this next new moon. And I think as the moon sextiling Mars here, there is this energy that kind of gets sparked up to handle this, handle that, handle this, handle that. I think it's going to be easy to be distracted. I think it's also going to be easy to be argumentative. As someone with a Sag rising and Mars and Gemini on my descendant, I find this has been a very big time for me to be in arguments with people. And so, the moon in Leo is kind of like, well, they're, misaddressing me. And the moon in Leo is like, that's not actually how I am. And, as the moon, when we get into this tomorrow on Thursday, the moon will be going opposite Saturn. And so there's going to be this pressure, right? This is what I don't like about the Aquarius stuff with the Leo stuff is there's kind of this pressure to be even more so Leo with Saturn and Aquarius, where it's like when you have the crowd and everyone going against what you do, Leo's like, well, fuck it. I just want to be myself. And my biggest thing is this is low energy. This is much more of a time to, with Mars and Gemini, if you have a bunch of things to do it, but don't get distracted because it's going to really take your energy away. I think as the moon is sextiling Mars and Gemini, it's going to be an excellent day to wrap up things. You'll have a little burst of energy. This isn't to start things. This is to kind of complete things or get things kind of out of the way so you're ready for that new moon that we have coming up this Sunday. So I like this. It's not really the biggest transit in the world, but it's pretty nice. So as we get into Thursday, we've got a lot more going on. Thursday, the moon's going to go opposite Saturn all day long. So there will be this kind of pressure, this kind of sense of fear. The moon in Leo opposite Saturn in Aquarius is very performative, but it's kind of like when your emotions are really invested into a performance, but everyone in your crowd is like your biggest critic. There's like this pressure to really do your best. And so I think that might be more difficult as the sun goes into Libra. The sun is entering its sign of fall, fall begins essentially with the sun going into Libra. So our sense of willpower and independence and our sense of identity is weakening. The sun in Libra is much more, the sun in Leo is like, I'm just going to do me, right? The sun in Libra is much more dependent on relationships and working with other people and working in balance, in symbiosis with other people to get things done, to promote harmony, to promote peace, to promote fairness. So as the moon's opposite Saturn, I feel like there will be this kind of feeling of letting your ego go to the side for the sake of other people. But what's interesting about Thursday is the sun's going to enter Libra with this Mercury Cazimi. So I couldn't get the right picture of this, but just pretend that the sun is already in Libra and conjoining Mercury. So what a Cazimi is that if this is your first time hearing this word, this is when a planet conjoins the sun or when the sun conjoins a planet. And what this does is this is essentially refreshes that planet's energy. In ancient astrology, a planet being combust, which means it is near the sun, it is on fire, that is like a sick or a dying planet. Something is fading away. But that, in ancient astrology, what they say is a Cazimi planet is like a death. And you can make that literal, but let's talk about it in a metaphorical sense here, where this has been Mercury going retrograde. It's been combust. There's been these ideas that we've been changing and, purging out, and it's been maybe hard to gain a sense of what the exact solution is here. But we get the solution here on Thursday. I think the hard part is the moon will, of course, go opposite Saturn. This happens actually much more earlier in the morning. So there will be this kind of energy of facing the music, facing the authorities, maybe getting some criticism. Venus is still in Virgo here, and that moon in Leo might take that criticism a little bit harshly. I think this is also, as this is a waning moon and the sun's going into Libra, maybe this is a less of a Leo time and more of a Libra time. And Saturn's in Aquarius. It's asking you, what is society saying? What is your community saying? What are the authorities saying? And there's certain points where, I know I've been saying this for a long time with all of the Aquarius bullshit that we've had going on of like, stand up to it and go against it. But I'm really rooted in looking at things through this astrological sense and looking at things through time. And there's a time and a place for everything. And this seems much more of a time of letting your own not necessarily letting your own needs go, but like saying, okay, like there's things that the ego wants and that the self wants, but where are you willing to, I don't want to say even just get rid of those desires, but, maybe be willing to sacrifice some of those things for the sake of other people, because this is a lot of other people energy, right? Everything's in Libra. We're going to have Saturn still in Aquarius for a while. Mars is in Gemini. There's a lot of social air sign stuff going on here. And I think as the moon goes opposite Saturn, there is this kind of sense of like, yeah, maybe I should, maybe, I don't want to say down yourself, because I'm so like, be a Leo, be, independent, fuck everyone and their thoughts and opinions. And this isn't necessarily to like cower to fear or to, bend to the knee of authority, but this is kind of like, hey, maybe take some feedback. You don't have to let it emotionally affect you. Like, for example, I get, all types of haters all the time. And there's times, I read all of the comments, unfortunately. And there's times where I read a comment where clearly someone is just kind of being an asshole, but they make a point. And I have the choice to say, okay, I can let this affect me emotionally and make it about me, or I can make it about, being a better content creator, being a better astrologer. And how can I take that feedback? Because feedback is often harsh, but always fair. And how can I take that feedback and do something positive with it without it letting affect me personally? So that's what I really see here. And this is that Mercury Cazimi point. This is where the insights really hit. This is where everything becomes very clear. This is where the solution becomes very clear. This is the sun going into Libra, though. So there is the sense of working with other people, being, I don't want to say at the detriment of other people, but the sun's going into fall. The sun doesn't do well in Libra. The sun is about being yourself and being independent. But in Libra, it's much more about, hey, we need to bring that into balance with other people. As we go more into the night, as night gets longer and the day gets shorter, you get the Saturn energy kind of being a lot more stronger. And I think as this Mercury Cazimi point happens at 0 Libra, it doesn't happen in Virgo, it happens in Libra. There is this, sense of having a conversation, right? This is in Libra, communicating with other people. This is also, while this is a Cazimi in Libra, the ruler of Libra, Venus, is in Virgo. This is pointing out some of the problems. This is kind of pointing out, hey, this isn't right. This isn't, what's best. This makes me feel uncomfortable. It's very Mercury. It's very Venus and Virgo, right? Like, while Venus is all about pleasure, and she's about to have a lot of fun as she goes into Libra, but as she's in Virgo, there's the sense of trying to address the imperfections. And I think this is a day where we kind of have a clarity of what those imperfections are. And the moon's going to be opposite Saturn. So it might feel, like you might kind of feel like targeted, but you really have to get over yourself, to be honest with you guys. You got to get over yourself. You have to be willing to, take in new ideas. But what I like about this, though, is that this is pushing us forward into a new direction, right? Mercury doesn't enter Virgo on Thursday. It'll enter Virgo, I believe, on Friday the next day. But this is at least where we have a solution that is clear. It is much more, and then again, this is the sun going into Libra. Things become more fair, things become more balanced, things become more peaceful. I think it's just kind of being about like, kind of getting over yourself, not letting, feedback or criticism or, especially, for example, there's nothing more that I hate when someone tries to tell me how to do my job. But when it's someone who's an authority figure, like for example, if I'm working at a place and a boss comes and is like, this is how you could do it better. I'm like, I'm not listening to that. Fuck that guy. But then I ended up applying what they say and my job becomes easier. This is kind of what that energy is. It's like, it might be, uncomfortable learning and being told that you're wrong, but at least this is a path forward to solutions and for things working out easier. So as we go into Thursday and we go into fall, I don't want to say spring into fall, but more like fall back into fall. Also, too, let me know. So what's up with the time change? Are we like, I heard that like the Senate was like, yeah, we're getting rid of daylight savings. Is that a thing anymore? Do I have to worry about time changes? I don't know. I can't remember this. Let me know in the comments. But anyway, sun goes into Libra, Mercury Cazimi. This is a very peaceful conversation too. I really like this Mercury Cazimi just being at 0 Libra, because when we get into Friday, the moon goes into Virgo, Mercury goes into Virgo, and Venus goes opposite Neptune. This is where it gets a little bit more confusing, but at least things go in more the direction of being solution-oriented. Let's talk first about the moon going into Virgo. So this moon going into Virgo actually happens much more like Thursday night, early Friday morning. And as the moon goes into Virgo, again, emotions, our body, things that are kind of much more hidden and internal, we're going into Virgo. It's specificity, organization, detail. I say this all the time. The moon in Virgo is an excellent time to clean your room, clean your house. And this is a waning moon. This is almost a dark moon in Virgo. This is an excellent time to clean. Get your shit clean. I'm almost saying this for myself looking around at my studio. The moon's going to go into Virgo, and we're much more focused on, again, what are the details? What do we need to change? You don't know what you need to change until you know the data. This is something that you learn as a YouTuber. Like, I have to constantly go into my analytics and into my back end and figure out all of these numbers, because then once I know the numbers, once I have the information, then the solution becomes a lot more clear. And this is much more of a day of just gaining that information. Mercury goes back into Virgo, and this is Mercury's home sign, and it's retrograde. This is being like, oh, this is the data I didn't understand. This is the information that wasn't necessarily clear, or maybe this was the input that was not correct. Mercury is going to be applying to Venus. So this is solution oriented, right? And it's still Venus in Virgo. It's not going to feel good. I kind of think of it as like, I remember being a little boy and being in like first or second grade, and my mom like licking her finger to like fix my hair. And I was like, ugh, I hate this. But it was like, to make me look more proper for school. And that's kind of how I look at this, is like, hey, you're gonna have to let your mom take care of you to like, at least look presentable for school, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable. And as the moon goes into Virgo, it's a dark moon. This is just about, getting your details right, getting your things organized. I think we're getting really into this new moon energy. Mercury goes back into Virgo. It's much more solution oriented. We're much more looking at the details and looking at how can we understand this data differently, right? I wanted to go on to something about like statistics, and something with statistics is it's very easy to like manipulate and lie about statistics. And I feel like there's kind of this energy here where, if you've ever read like a statistics thing, it's like, oh, it becomes very clear. But then when you look at other statistics and other studies, you're like, oh, well, that study doesn't mean anything. Those statistics don't mean anything. And that's kind of like this energy here where you kind of realize the information or the input that you got not necessarily was wrong, but maybe it was misinterpreted. And what's interesting is Venus is opposite Neptune here. What I don't like, I'm going to tell you what I do like and what I don't like. What I don't like about this is I feel like it will be very easy to be overwhelmed with what the issue is, right? Neptune really obfuscates things, really blurs things, really confuses things. And Venus in Virgo is like, just tell me what the issue is. Just tell me where I'm not perfect so I can be better. What I do like about it, though, is Venus in Virgo opposite Neptune in Pisces. I think you don't realize what's wrong until you are aware enough of something being like not correct, right? Like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this, but there's certain moments, like for example, I hate to make an analogy about me again, but let's say this green screen back here that you can't really see. In fact, actually I can probably show you right here. You see this little shadow right here? This is an imperfection. This is not necessarily perfect, but there are times where I don't necessarily know what the solution is, but Venus in Virgo is like, okay, the setup's not perfect. Not everything's going to be perfect, but if I can change my angle, if I can see what the actual issue is, it'll be easier to change. I feel like Venus in Virgo is like, again, what I don't like about it is that it's going to be easy to be overwhelmed with all of the issues. And it's like Venus and Virgo is very anxious, very like anxiety riddled, and opposite Neptune, it just feels like it's coming from all directions. But there's also this opportunity to say like, okay, let me look, beyond the veil. Like, from why I brought up this green screen thing is that it's easy for me to be like, oh, I have this green screen up now. It looks great. And then I don't even notice the imperfections because I'm more excited and jazzed about the fact that I got it set up, versus as I've done this process now for a few weeks, for a couple months now, I've been able to kind of go much more, oh, let me perfect this here. Let me perfect this here. And again, what I'm trying to say is the good part about this is Venus and Virgo opposite Neptune and Pisces are things that might have confused you and that you might not even paid attention to. Because you're focused on the imperfections, you might have a chance to actually really see where things are actually wrong. And it's Neptune stuff. It's like, oh, I was just interpreting this. I was under this, guys, I was, for lack of a better word, brainwashed to believe, this. I was, propagated to see it this way. And Venus and Virgo is looking beyond that veil, because Venus and Virgo knows that it's not perfect. Venus and Virgo knows that it's not going to be exactly, peaceful and harmonious. So this is an excellent day to really look at what the issue is. The moon's in Virgo, Mercury's in Virgo. I think it's going to be easy to be overwhelmed with what all the possibilities of the problems are. Like, for example, it's like, well, this green screen's not good enough. This camera's not good enough. I still don't have a lapel. People still bug me about that. I know I need to get rid of this microphone. But this is an excellent time to really, ask your, don't be afraid to look a little bit deeper into the problem. Don't be afraid to, nitpick yourself, because I think this is where, think about the feeling of finding the solution more than the feeling of just seeing the problem. Because I think if you are much more focused on looking at the, sorry, I was checking to make sure this was still recording. I pushed a button. If you are much more focused on just looking at the problem, it's only going to be like a downhill spiral from there, versus if you're like, oh, I can see this problem now. Let me actually address it. Let me actually tweak it now that I'm seeing things a little bit clearer. I think when you can kind of embody that feeling of solutions, things will be a lot easier. And that's what a lot of this is. It's like, this is the Virgo day, getting all of the technicals right, getting all of the details right. So then we jump into Saturday. The moon will square Mars and conjoin Venus. That energy continues. This is a little rough. This is kind of like, again, something that I'm learning right now with my music is, and again, sometime my music will be out. I'm putting my heart and fucking soul into this, so sorry for getting you guys worked up on it. But I got plenty of music analogies. When it's Mars hour, sometimes I tend to overcorrect things, especially since Mars has been in Gemini. And like lately, I've been really fucking with the frequencies and trying to get space for all of the synths and the vocals to like, have space for each other. And sometimes when, for example, I listen to my music really, really loud, and sometimes I'll listen to my music so loud to where when I mess with the frequencies and adjust it, I actually do too much. And that's what I feel like a lot of Saturday is here. Because the moon's going to be squaring Mars first, and this is like, Mars in Gemini is like when you, for example, I can't listen to every single negative comment. Sometimes people leave me negative comments that are just like, well, if I listen to that, that's going to make me worse, which will make my content worse. Versus other times I get negative comments and like, maybe they have a good point and I'll take that as some feedback. But this is one of those times where if you lean a little bit too hard into the self-criticism, when you lean a little bit too hard into just the chatter, this Mars in Gemini, you're going to get worked up. You're going to be caring too much about other people's opinions and not what you think is good enough. So as the moon squares Mars in Gemini, it's like Mars in Gemini is like, just kind of listening to the crowd, and they're like, this sucks. And moon in Virgo is like, I got to do this. I got to do that. And your whole, your life is not about making other people happy. That's the big key here with the sun in Libra. A lot of these next few weeks is like, you can't just do everything to make everybody else happy. Yes, is that a point with the sun in Libra? It's not necessarily about making everybody happy, but working together. That's the truth. But it's not about people pleasing. Like I've said this before, like Libra energy is very doormat stuff. And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, I suck. Oh, well, okay. Like, I guess, we can be hard on me. You have to have a balance with it, right? It's the whole Libra thing. And as the moon squares Mars, there is going to be this opportunity to be like hearing this harsh feedback, and you kind of have to not worry about it. Because as the moon separates from Mars, it's going to start applying to Venus. Just because, it might be like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Just do what you can. Like when the moon's conjoining Venus and Virgo, this is at least feeling comfortable. Like the moon and Venus, we like those two planets together. In Virgo, it's like we'll feel more comfortable if our things are organized, if our space is cleaned, if we are just doing enough to, tweak the imperfections. You don't have to change everything. And I feel like with the moon squaring Mars, there's going to be this overwhelming feeling on Saturday of like, oh, well, this isn't perfect and this isn't perfect. And what do I do? And, it's just the spiral of the mutable signs. They love the spiral. But as the moon then separates from Mars and then applies to Venus, it's like, just do what you can. Do what's going to make you feel comfortable, right? For example, I don't want to use this analogy, but it's just too easy. But let's say you're a woman who is really focused on how they look. And in society, it's really easy for, like, if you just listen to the Mars and Gemini crowd of society, it's like, you're too fat, you're too this, you're too that. It's like, okay, well, you can't do all of that. But maybe what might make you feel better is putting on some eyeliner or changing your dress. Like, that's what this is about on Saturdays. Like, you can't be overwhelmed with every single problem being thrown at you, and you just have to do the little thing that is going to be beneficial for you moving forward. And it's going to be really easy to lean into the, like, this is all Gemini and Virgo stuff. It's just like noise, imperfection this is too detailed. Same thing, I like to think of Virgo and Gemini as like the stock market in New York, where everyone's just yelling numbers. And I always like to think if I was there, I'd be like, and writing down the wrong information, which is very Mercury retrograde in Virgo because everyone's just so loud and so obnoxious. But this is going to be a time to like, you can't listen to every single voice. You can't listen to all of the noise in the background. You've really just got to tweak each little thing. This is something I'm learning right now in music is, you know, I'm sure that I have a lot of producer followers, which I really enjoy. And I'm not necessarily an expert in audio engineering. I had to learn all this shit myself. And something I'm learning, it's like, you know, you can make something completely like, let's say, for example, my vocals. I can make my vocals sound 10,000 times better if I just barely tweak the mids in my bass and in my synth. And it's like, okay, well, if I want my vocals to sound better rather than messing around with the vocals, how about I just do a little bit of tweaking here with my synth and my bass to where it opens up space for my vocals to sound better? So it's one of those things of like, maybe if you want to find a solution, maybe don't necessarily go to the problem. Maybe find the source of it, right? And for this music analogy, a lot of the source of my issue has been like frequencies and other sounds that are overwhelming a certain space that my voice wants to protrude through. And so rather than tweaking my voice to succumb to all of the other noise, I can separate the other noise and really let my voice shine through. That was a really good analogy. I'm really happy about that one. So this is one of those days of like, and you just can't feel overwhelmed about it because it's going to feel easy to feel overwhelmed. But again, I can't recommend this enough. This is a weekend. This is, I mean, for one, it's a weekend. For one, it's a waning moon. This is not a weekend of partying and going out. This is a weekend of just like cleaning shit up, getting your life organized. There's spring cleaning, but then there's like fall cleaning or like fall maintenance. I don't know what to call it. Let me know what you guys think we should call it. But this is like that energy of like, let's get ready for fall. Let's get ready for winter. Let's get ready for, you know, this new 6-month period that we're going to be going into until we get to Aries season next year and we actually get to begin again. This is a, you know, something I really enjoy about winter is when there's not a lot of sunlight, this is a time to really focus on the internal parts of your life and to the things that are much more in your private area because you're not going out and traveling. You're spending more time at home. You're spending more time at family. So I just think this is a good time to really clean up, clear out things. You can't worry about every single issue at hand. Just worry about what's right in front of you. Then we get to Sunday. Whoops, that's not the right one. Sunday. The moon goes into Libra, and we have this new moon in Libra opposite Jupiter. Again, I really, really like this new moon. I've been looking forward to it for a while. The big thing here is this is a new moon, right? Refreshing energy. It's both of the luminaries focused to one area. And this is in Libra. This is in the sign of relationships, the sign of balance, the sign of peace. Unfortunately, the ruler is in fall in Virgo. So there is this sense of, you know, nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be exactly pleasurable, but what's just good enough? Like, you know, what is a win-win situation rather than just focusing on like, okay, well, there's the most ideal situation, but that's never actually really a possible. The most ideal situation is always great in some cases, but what is a solution? What is I don't want to say bargaining, but this is kind of a day to go, okay, I'm focused on this area now. I've cleared up this area. I have, you know, addressed some of the issues, but this is a new moon opposite Jupiter. I think if you really, well, this is the other thing. Let me just give you an FYI. 2023, when we start 2023, Jupiter's going to fly through Aries. And in my opinion, this is the time to get yourself like Jupiter just flew into Aries and it conjoined Mars. So we were just kind of doing the damn thing and we just kind of leaped into it. And as Jupiter's been retrograde, we've realized, oh, wow, I might have bit off a little bit more than I can chew. I might have, overestimated my abilities. And that's just part of the Jupiter retrograde phase, right? But this is that moment to go, okay, if I want to do that again, when Jupiter goes direct and flies through Aries again, how do I do that in a sustainable, balanced way, right? Like Jupiter and Aries, it's like if you want to win and if you want to have like the glory and if you want to, I guess win is probably the best way to say it. Sometimes that takes help from other people. Sometimes that takes, working with other people. And I think this new moon opposite Jupiter is really like, if Jupiter in Aries is also very like, give me everything, focused on me, where can you give to other people? Where can you be more, jovial, more abundant, more giving? I'm lacking the word that I want to say here. But this new moon in Libra opposite Jupiter is like, if we have all of this expansion with ourselves, with our abilities, with, things that we're initiating, how do we bring that into balance, right? Jupiter in Aries, you've got all of this stuff. You've got all of this, energy to go forward. It's retrograde, so you're having to like build it up inside yourself. This new moon in Libra is like, who can you give that to? Who can also help you? Something I really struggle with because I'm a Leo is like help. Like I'm a Saturn in Aries, Sun in Leo. Like a lot of my life is just doing it on my own. And something that I'm learning is that help is actually really nice, and people are there to help you. So find that help, find that balance with it. And this is also Mercury, like conjoining Venus here too. It's like maybe the solution is working with other people. Maybe the solution is, also too, it's Venus and Virgo. It's not going to be perfect. And I think if you're just waiting for the perfect solution, you're going to wait until you die, essentially. I think this is kind of one of those moments of like, you know what, this is good enough. You know what, this is fine with me. Mercury is still retrograde here, so we're still working through our issues. We're still relearning everything. But now that it's back in Virgo, this is much more about like, this is what I can address. This is what I can, reconfigure. Mercury retrograde in Libra was like, things are off balance, or what is the right balance here, or things like that, versus Mercury in Virgo is like, oh, these are the tiny little details I can go back over to fix it. And it's Mercury conjoining Venus with this new moon in Libra. This is like, there might be people here to help you. For example, as a musician, I can listen to my music and think it's great, but maybe I could give this to someone else, which is something I plan on doing, of like, hey, what do you see that I'm not seeing, right? I'm very Jupiter and Aries. I'm Jupiter and Capricorn, but Jupiter and Aries is very like, do it yourself, you just go for it. But is there someone in the area that can help you see things that maybe you're not seeing? Or maybe some expert that can show you things that you don't necessarily see. So I think a lot of Sunday is just like, again, a lot of this is getting over yourself. And a lot of this is like maybe asking for help with other people. I really like this. So anyway, that's Sunday. That's this week. And then we go into next week. Next week, we have so much going on. We have Mercury conjoining Venus. We have Mars trining. Mercury conjoining Venus is like the solution gets detailed. All the tiny details get worked out. Mars trine Saturn. I'm fucking loving Mars trine Saturn. Please give me all of that. I'm so thankful that this Mars retrograde is trining Saturn. That to me is, as the astrologer, is an indication of like, this is going to be a constructive Mars retrograde. Mars will square Neptune at some point, so there will be some confusion. But as Mars trines Saturn, like this is very constructive. This is working together with a lot, like, your energy and your drive and your desires are working together with like your long-term commitments. Venus enters Libra and goes opposite Jupiter. Like, finally, for all of you motherfuckers out there that go, Cameron, when is it going to get better? This is when it gets better. Just like this is a time when it gets better. And if you've been one of my clients, I have said a lot that the first 3 weeks of October are the best. Now, the last week of October and the first week of November are like the worst, but the first 3 weeks of October are great, so you really should enjoy it. Mercury stations direct, so it's like, okay, all of these problems, the solutions come in, the clarity hits in, and we get to go over everything that we've just been doing now with a fresher mind. The only thing that I wanted to address here is Saturn squares Uranus by less than 1 degree next week. So the Saturn-Uranus square doesn't actually complete itself. I believe they only get less than a degree, but this is much more something that you're going to see in the world. Like, I'm really surprised that I was really looking at the train conductor strike that was happening, which is very Saturn square Uranus, which would have been really, the Saturn square Uranus has been like the whole supply chain crisis and all of that stuff, which that's what this is going to be about. There's going to be some supply chain crisis, more economic, craziness over oil and all that other stuff. That all is going to be next week. But this is also like Saturn squaring Uranus. Expect a lot of upheaval. Expect a lot of instability, especially with the Saturn stuff, with the system, the way things are organized, the way things are collectivized. Expect a lot of disruption there. However, everything else is really like, well, for example, maybe this is all solution oriented, but at the same time, it's taking a lot of disruption to gain these solutions. But that's what next week is. So I guess as far as final thoughts go, a lot of this week is just cleaning up and clearing out, letting things go, getting over yourself so you could focus on these problems and so you can get to the solution. The next week is when we get that solution clear and everything begins to move forward and it feels really good. But this week is like taking the time out to really look at the details, look at the fine print, and be willing to change, be willing to fix and adjust things. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. follow me on, or just go to my Patreon, become a patron. I've got my 2023 year ahead horoscopes out, plus early release, plus I got some other bonus stuff there. If you want to do a consultation, go over to my website, camwhiteastro.com. I'm open for readings at the moment. And yeah, with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next week.